There are very few players who cannot be blocked. Sure, there are plenty of guys who can't be handled one-on-one, but it's truly special when an offensive staff, offense, and offensive line sets out all week to create a plan to stop one guy, send multiple guys at him every single down, only for him to wreck the game over and over. Micah Parsons is that dude. 13 plus sacks in each of his first 3 seasons. So today we'll dive into how teams try to block him with different schemes and why all of them fail. When offensive coaching staffs start preparing their game plans, their protection plans Monday mornings, they always start with Parsons. They have to cater very specific plans to defending against him, where you're not just going to line up your best lineman one-on-one. Coaching staff slide their center towards him, their full line, add a running back, a tight end, they'll throw the kitchen sink. But that's why the Cowboys don't just line him up in the same single spot every time. They move him everywhere more than anybody else in the league. But before we dive into the ultimate chess match of Parsons versus an entire offensive line, I want to first thank this week's sponsor, SeatGeek. With NFL training camp kicking off, SeatGeek is the best app to use for buying preseason or regular season tickets for your favorite team. I'm looking to check out a Bears preseason game. I want to fly to New York to see the Bills take on the Jets with Achilles tendons intact. And when I'm making these plans, I always rely on SeatGeek. I prefer them because their app rates the deals for each game based on the best deal for each seat. A green dot means it's a good deal, a red dot means it's a bad one. I'll use the app months, weeks, or even hours before the game, concert, festival, whatever I'm about to go to, green dot it up, and I am good to go. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and what I really love about them, no matter how many times you use SeatGeek, you can always use my code Rollins10 to get 10% off your next order and every order into the future. That's Rollins10 for 10% off all orders. First, we'll break down the basics of what teams try to do, and then get into the counters, then the counters to the counters. On the average NFL play, there are 5 offensive linemen and 4 defensive pass rushers. Generally speaking, the 2 guards and tackles take the 2 defensive ends and defensive tackles, which leaves the center who is there for the Mike linebacker if he's blitzing, partly why you hear the QB yell, Mike 52 or whatever. But you can tell where on the defensive line the offense is most worried about based on which side the center is sliding. This is called a half slide protection, where teams use the center to try and kind of zone up the Parsons side to create a 3-over-2 and put an extra body on him. We've talked about scat, which is a 5-man half slide, jet, which is a 6-man half slide, including the running back, man is when there is a man for a man, half slide is when we slide an extra guy to one side, then man up the other. One thing that happens when teams slide protections towards Parsons is it creates one-on-ones for the other side of the line so they can go to work. The Cowboys have had good pass rush unit the last few years where multiple guys can take advantage of one-on-one matchups, because good players should always win those. So all the attention Parsons consistently receives gives other guys these advantageous matchups. To create the one-on-one for him when teams use the half-slide scat protection with 5 linemen, the Cowboys do a few things. They'll add a 5th rusher to create one-on-ones across the board, so Parsons gets his ISO matchup where he can bull rush away and create quick and easy pressure. The downside of putting that 5th defender on the line is that you lose a guy in coverage, so the Cowboys do something the 49ers really popularized with Fred Warner. They'll put that 5th guy on the line, or nearby, then drop him into coverage so the O-line still has to account for him. With the Cowboys overloading the left side of the protection with 3 big pass rushers, typically we'd see a 4-man slide where we'd man up the right tackle and DeMarcus Lawrence, then slide everybody to the left to make sure we get everybody to this side taken care of. But watch Austin Corbett. Because J-Ron Curse is over him at the snap, he can't slide to the left, which creates one-on-ones across the board. Now we're starting to see how Parsons can move around the line where he's not just a defensive end, he can bump inside and attack guards just as well. The mobility in his upper body is what I want you to take note of. Chandler Zavala is reading his breastplate to try and key in on where he's going. but look at how many different moves Parsons throws at him. We've got outside, where maybe he's pinning the tackle so the end can loop inside, back inside, like he's gonna bull rush right through him or maybe even slant across his face, outside again to where Zavala is starting to throw his punch, then we cross over him with a club arm over, and it's curtains for Shrinky Dink. A changeup Dallas loves to throw with him is to include him in their stunt game, where he's just way too fast for offenses to pick up. As I said, these 5-man rushes create one-on-ones when the offense has just the 5 blockers. So as an offense, you're forced to 5-0, which means mono-e-mono blocking. Well, that creates a problem when Bradley Bozeman's assignment is DeMarcus Lawrence, but then quickly becomes Parsons because he has to switch over in the blink of an eye. Another way they can counter these 5-man blocking 5-0 schemes is to put Parsons in the middle of the defensive line, which has revolutionized the position. Now we see Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, multiple pass rushers lining up over the center to get the right matchup against a position that almost never has to block a defensive end one-on-one. Once again, we see the upper body mobility. David Andrews thinks he's going in, out, and then we hit him with that same club arm over. Offenses will full slide towards him, especially when he's playing this over-the-center technique. But because it's a position that typically a big, massive defensive tackle plays, offenses just aren't ready for his speed and quickness. Full slide is just what it sounds like. Everybody is stepping over a gap, sliding to their left, which leaves the running backs one-on-one with the linebacker, and this is to get multiple bodies on Parsons. But even though Bozeman knocks him with a hand, he understands exactly what's happening, and he powers and rips through Corbett to create pressure on the little guy. What I don't think he gets enough credit for is how smart he is. The Cowboys give him free rein to adjust his technique before the snap to get the optimal look. Here he can tell the Commanders are full sliding, this time to the right, but look at how he sees more room in between the left guard and center compared to the right guard and center, so he switches over and shoots the gap. Chris Paul screws up the call, and Parsons destroys the play. Teams will obviously send their running back or tight end to chip him, which means the tackle sets inside knowing he'll get extra help outside. But Parsons is a man of pure destruction, and it does not matter when teams use extra human bodies to defend him. The only thing I really saw pop up on his film as a negative was when guys were able to get into his pads. It makes sense, he's not the biggest guy ever, he's super strong and has electric speed, like 4.3 640, but at just 245 pounds, he's definitely not gigantic, so there is a way to stop him, but if it happens once, he knows how to counter it. First off, we can see the upper body mobility I was talking about. Vidarian Lowe is trying to get hands on his pads, but Parsons goes crazier than Antonio Brown on Twitter. Then later in the game, Lowe thinks he's got him. He takes a softer drop vertically and positions himself outside to cut off the edge because he thinks that same move is coming. But Parsons violently sticks his foot in the ground and explodes back inside and creates pressure on the quarterback once again. His bull rush, his straight power move, is unbelievable. He comes flying in a million miles an hour, and despite his slighter frame, he's gonna destroy you straight backwards. And then when you gear up for the same move to protect yourself against the power, look at how Andrew Wiley tries to grip around him so that he can get under his pads and lift up on the power, but then Parsons just slips the hands and utterly wrecks him. To juxtapose his power moves, his counter moves, his movement ability is just unmatched off the edge. When a tackle is punching with his full weight at the pass rusher, that is where all his momentum is going. But the fact that at any moment Parsons can make you completely whiff your move, whether it's a hand counter or just running and dipping around you to where you can't even touch him, this is some Floyd Mayweather shit. This is simply not normal. Parsons led the league in pressures in 2023, despite not rushing the quarterback full-time like a Nick Bosa or Myles Garrett. In my opinion, he is the most dominant defensive player in the game. Teams begin their week game planning how to defend him, but whether it's half slides, full slides, 5-0s, chips, anything you can think of, nothing can stop him, especially when you start moving him all over the line of scrimmage. He's only 25 years old and already has 40 sacks to his name. As he continues to develop, as he continues to hone his craft, work on his weaknesses and improve his strengths, Micah Parsons could very well go down as the greatest defensive player of all time.